Hi everyone, this is Abby with You Can Do Art Studio in Webster Groves, and today I'm going to be showing you how to make this Mosaic Blues Plaque kit. So this is a grouted mosaic. It's got all these lovely tiles on it, and you'll see that on the back there's a little spot so you can hang it up. So first I'm going to be showing you everything that's in your kit. So you've got your set of instructions. This has all the supplies that are included in your kit, and it's got all the directions here. Also some pictures on the back to help you along. I'm going to be showing you how to do everything here, but I also recommend looking over the instructions just so you really know what to do. The next thing you've got is obviously your blues plaque. This is just a wooden plaque in the shape of a blues note that we're going to be putting all of our tiles onto. You'll have a bag of black powder. This is your grout. This is what we're going to be using to fill in all the cracks in between the tiles. And you also have a bag of tiles that we're going to be applying to the blues plaque. So these are the tiles that are in your kit. We also have these light blue tiles that I'm going to be using, and you can choose that as an option in your kit as well. Next, you've got a cotton cloth. This is going to be for polishing the tiles after we're all done. And then you have this little bundle here. This is just some parchment paper wrapped around the sheet glue that we're going to be using to attach all the tiles. You also have a little bottle of black paint for adding the details onto the sides and back after we're finished. You have a craft stick for help with grouting. And then we're going to be adding these little things of ultimate glue. It says ULT on the top. So this is just a tacky craft glue that we'll be using in case any tiles pop off. Now that's everything that's in your kit, but we are going to be using some other things that are not included. You're also going to need a paintbrush. We recommend using a 3/4 inch flat brush. We sell these in the studio for $3.95. You'll also need a little disposable cup to mix the grout in. And then you'll need some phone book paper or newspaper. We like phone book paper better, but you can also use newspaper to clean off the tiles once it's being grouted. And then I also have some newspaper here that I'm going to be using as a surface covering. So it's really important that you use a disposable surface covering to work on because the grout is really messy and we don't want any of that getting on your table. So that's everything that's in our kit, and now it's time to get started. Alright, so the first thing you want to do is have an adult preheat your oven to 225 degrees Fahrenheit. That's because we are going to be putting our blues plaque in the oven, and that's how this glue will work. When it melts, it will adhere the tiles to the blues plaque. So the next thing we're going to do is start laying out our tiles in the pattern that we want. So I'm going to clear my station off of everything that I don't need for the tiles. So you'll see that I kept my blues plaque, my package of glues, my tiles, and I organized them all by color so it's a little bit easier for me. And then I have my instructions on hand just in case I need to reference them. So the first thing we're going to do is unpackage our glue. When you open this up, you'll see that there's a lot of different pieces of glue. So we're going to be putting these together almost like a puzzle on top of our blues plaque. This is called sheet glue. It's a wax-based, non-toxic glue that we use for our mosaic projects. And we have so many glue options here at You Can Do. This is just one of them. If you've made a mosaic project with us before, you might have used this or something like this, or you've actually used liquid glue to glue your tiles down. But we just picked this one because it's really convenient and really nice for a beginner level project. So I'm just going to be placing my glue on top of my plaque like this. So it's in different pieces, so you'll just kind of have to piece it together. And you'll notice that we did include an extra piece just in case there's any big gaps between the glue or something isn't quite covered. In my kit, this has a piece that says take tape off because it's actually in two pieces, so you want to make sure you do, in fact, take that tape off. And it's totally okay for the glue to overlap. That's fine. So something you'll notice about this glue is that it's actually not sticking down right now. I can take it off, I can move it around, so you do want to be careful when you put your tiles on that you don't accidentally shift all your glue around and knock your tiles off. Alright, great, so my glue is down now. So now I'll be able to start putting on the tiles. You'll notice in our sample that we used all dark blue tiles, but I'm going to add some of these light blue tiles. And you'll notice that these ones aren't cut. So all the tiles that we used are 3/4 inch Venetian glass tiles, which is really high quality. And we have pre-cut yours for you into these little tiny rectangular pieces. but these ones that I'm using aren't going to be cut. So I'm just going to do a quick tutorial on how to cut tiles. This is something you don't need to do because we did it for you, but I thought you might like to see it. These are the tools that we use to cut tiles like this. These are called wheeled nippers. They have these little wheels here that we use to cut the tiles. So you want to hold the nippers like this, squeeze it just a little bit. This is our neutral position. You don't want your neutral position out here because that's way too much work. So you're going to hold them like this, and then when you take your tile, you'll notice that there are little score marks or lines on the tile. And you want to place that in your nippers. You want your nippers to be perpendicular to those lines. So not going the same way as those lines, going exactly the opposite of those lines. And then you're going to squeeze down just a little bit more. And then you want to place your nippers in a Ziploc bag, because when you break your tile, you don't want little pieces going everywhere and getting in your eyes or somewhere where someone might get a cut. And then you just squeeze, and the tile breaks really, really nicely. Tiles like to be cut symmetrically. If you try and cut them into even pieces, that's when they'll cut best. You'll notice that mine aren't totally perfect either, and that's something that we really love and embrace here at You Can Do Art Studio, because it means that every project is unique, so no two projects are the same. So I have this whole little container of tiles, and I'm going to go ahead and cut all of those so I can use them on my project. So my light blue tiles are all nice and cut, so I am ready to start putting my tiles onto my glue. I'm going to be starting with this dark blue pile over here. So when you put your tiles down, you are going to notice that the glue still isn't sticky. It's not going to be sticky yet. So you do want to be extra careful when you put your tiles down, that when you go to put one down, you don't accidentally knock off a whole bunch more, because these can still shift around even after you've placed them down. So there's one, and then when you go to add your next tile, you want to be very careful about the space in between the two tiles. So you don't want too much space between the tiles like that, because then there's no way for the grout to go in. There's no structure to hold the grout in there. Sometimes people think the grout is what holds the tiles in, but it's not. It's really just this sheet glue here. So again, you don't want too much space, because then the grout will fall out. But you also don't want them to be right up next to each other, touching like that, because then there's no room for the grout to go in. So we like to recommend about a toothpick space apart. About like that. And you can see in the picture on the instructions too about how far apart the tiles are, so that's a great reference. And so I'm just going to keep placing my tiles along. I'm going to be following the pattern that we used in our sample, except I'm going to be adding the light blue tiles. But again, you don't have to do that. You have your tiles in your imagination, so let your creativity run wild, and we'd love to see what you come up with that you can do. Just remember to keep these tiles about a toothpick space apart. That's the most important part. And then you don't want any tiles hanging off the edge like that, because then they might not get glued down and they'll fall off. All right, so I'm going to put all my tiles on, and you can do the same on your plaque. And then something you do want to think about when you're placing your tiles down is that this glue is going to melt in the oven, so your tiles are going to shift a little bit. So don't worry about being too super precise, because it might not be exactly the way it was when you put it in the oven. So it looks like I'm making good progress on my blues plaque. Something else I want to make sure you know is that your tiles are going to have a bumpy side, this side with these indentations or score marks, and a smooth side without those lines. It's important that you place the bumpy side or the scored side down on the glue, so the smooth side is up. These score marks help the glue stick a little bit better, and they'll make sure your tiles stay stuck down. So now I am all finished laying my tiles out on top of my glue. And as you can see, I really worked to keep that toothpick space in between each tile. You can see there are a couple spots where it's a little bit smaller and a couple spots where it's a little bit bigger, but for the most part, I kept that toothpick space. So now what we're gonna do is put it in the oven. So make sure you have an adult put this in the oven for 15 to 20 minutes. When it's in the oven, the glue will get all melty and gooey, and then you'll take it out and it cools and it seals the tiles in there really nicely. Also, for the adult, after it comes out, you have about a minute when the glue is still wet to shift the tiles around a little bit in case any of them shifted while the glue was melting. Make sure you don't overbake this because sometimes the glue will actually soak into the wood and won't stick the tiles to the plaque. And then another thing to remember is sometimes this can be a point in a project when you might look at it and think, it doesn't look as good as I want it to look, and you might get a little discouraged. But you have to remember that we're not done yet, and it's going to look so much better after it's grouted. And I'm sure it already looks fantastic. So I'm going to go put my plaque in the oven for 15 to 20 minutes, and after it's done, I'll take it out and let it cool completely, and then we'll be ready to grout. So my blues plaque has come out of the oven. All the tiles are really sealed in there, as you can see. After it came out, I did have to shift a couple of them a little bit to make sure I had that toothpick amount of space. And there's still a couple places where it's a little bit bigger or a little bit smaller, but it is mostly a toothpick space apart. So now that it is completely cooled and dried, we are ready to start grouting. So I'm going to set up my station with everything I need for grout. Now I am all set up and ready to grout. Grouting is super messy, so you do want to make sure that you have a nice table covering underneath your plaque. I just use newspaper so that no grout gets on my table. I've got my plaque here, obviously. I have my bag of grout. I've got my disposable cup, I'm just using this little plastic one, and a craft stick. I've got my phone book paper or my newspaper, you can use either, and my cotton cloth, and both of these are going to be used for polishing. I also have my little tub of glue on hand in case any tiles pop off, and then I've got a little bit of water because that is what we need to mix the grout. So now I'm ready to go, and I'm going to start by emptying some of this grout into my cup. So I really just want a little bit. I'm not going to do too much. I'm not going to pour in the whole thing. And I'll seal my bag back up. Alright, so as you can see right now, the grout is really, really powdery. And we can't put this on our project yet because it won't stick to anything. So what we're going to do is add a little bit of water. So when we mix grout, we want to get it to the right consistency. That means we want to get it to the right thickness so that it's thick enough to go in, but it's not pouring all over the place. So I've started to mix my grout, and the consistency we're going for is like a thick, gritty brownie batter. So if you'll see, mine is pretty liquidy right now. So the easy solution to that is just add a little bit more powder. And if yours is too thick, you just add a little bit more water until you get to the right consistency. It's really just a trial and error until you find what works. Alright, so this looks like a good consistency for me. It's pretty thick, it's gritty, but it's still got some liquid in it so that I'll be able to spread it around pretty easily. So you'll notice, even as you're stirring it, that the grout tends to dry pretty quickly. That's called slaking. So the grout will slake, and it dries the most within the first 2 minutes. It usually needs about a full day to cure, depending on things like the humidity and how far apart your tiles are, but it does the most drying in the first 2 minutes. So now that we've got our grout nice and mixed up, what we're gonna do is pretty much just start spreading it on top of the tiles. And it's going to get all over the tops of the tiles. The tiles are going to get very dirty, but don't worry because we are going to clean it off later. So you can use your craft stick or you can really just use your finger. Sometimes I like using my finger. So you only want to do a little bit of grout at a time, and I recommend starting with a small section of your plaque just so you begin to get the feel for things. And then you'll notice that there is a little bit of space between this tile and the edge. So what you're going to do with that is just take your finger and really nicely smooth the edges so you get a nice beveled edge. Just like that. It's great sometimes to hold it up to eye level so you can see how your edge looks. And don't worry about anything getting on this part here. You want to get the big chunks of it off, but we are going to be painting over this so you won't see those little grout flecks. And then while you're doing this, if any tile does happen to pop off, you just apply a little dot of glue to this part, and then you're going to put the tile back on, you'll let it dry, and then you can come back and grout that part. So I'm going to finish grouting this little section here. Alright, so I finished doing this little part here. I'm just doing this section for now, and then I'll mix up some more grout and do the rest. But the next thing you're going to do is start to polish your tiles. So we're going to start by trying to get the big chunks of grout off. So you just take your phone book paper or your newspaper and fold it up a little bit, and then you're just going to rub it gently over the tops of your tiles. So you'll see that this has started to get some of the big chunks off. You can see them coming off of my plaque there. You're just going to keep doing that. So the goal with this part, you want to uncover the corners and the edge of each tile. So we don't need to get all the stuff off of the middle yet, but you just want to get the corners and the edge of each tile so that we can see where each tile starts and stops. Alright, see, you can already see a bunch of the tiles again. So I'm going to keep doing this on this part until I can see the edge and corner of every tile. And then what I'll continue doing is putting grout on and getting these big chunks off as I go. Something you don't want to do is temper the grout. So tempering is when you take a batch of grout that you've already made and it's kind of dry, but you try and pour water back into it to sort of revive it. You don't want to do that because then the grout's just not exactly right. So you want to make a batch of grout, use all of it up, and then polish off the tiles, and then you'll go back and make some more grout and then do the next section. So I'm going to go ahead and grout my whole plaque and then use the phone book paper on it. And then you want to make sure while you're doing this that if you go to wash your hands off, because obviously grout is pretty dirty, if you go to wash your hands off, you want to get all the big chunks off with newspaper or paper towels first, because the grout can clog your drain and that would be really bad for your plumbing. So make sure if you need to wash your hands, you get off the big clumps with a paper towel. Alright, so I have finished going over my blues plaque with the phone book paper. It's all grouted now, and I did go over it with the phone paper to get all those big chunks off. So I'm just going to do one last little sweep just to make sure I got everything. And then we're so close to being done. One of the last things for polishing that we have to do is take our cotton cloth, and you can stick your finger in it or you can just use a craft stick, and individually go over each tile and really polish it off so that it's super clean and super shiny and there's no more grout on it. So you're just going to do this all over your plaque, and you do have to make sure that you get every tile. So here it is, all nice and polished and shiny. I think it looks really, really great. So the last thing we're going to do is paint it, but before we start doing that, I have all this grout all over the place. So I'm going to clear my workstation and get everything out of the way so I can paint. So the very last step for this project is to paint the edges in the back. So I've cleaned off everything. I got a new placemat. I went and washed my hands, and I've got my brush, my paint, my plaque, and then I got a little paper plate to put my paint on. So I'm just going to squeeze it a little bit out. I'm going to start down here. So I dip my brush in, and I'm just going to very carefully get right on the edge. Just like that. So you're just going to do that all the way around your plaque. So now my edges are all painted all around the sides, and the last thing to do is paint the back. So it is the back, and you're not going to see it, but so it doesn't matter as much, but we still want to use good painting techniques. So remember, long, smooth strokes in one direction, just like this. I just picked horizontal, but you can do vertical if you want. Just long, smooth strokes like that, not a bunch of little ones like that in all crazy directions, just long, smooth strokes. So I'm going to paint the whole back. And here it is. I finished painting the back, and then I dried it off with a hairdryer. You can have an adult help you too if you want to do that. So now it is all finished. I think it looks amazing. I'm really happy with the way it turned out, and I hope you guys also had a super great time making it. This is an awesome project to hang up in your room or put on a shelf or something. It's not great for outside because it's wood, but it will look awesome in your house. So I really hope you enjoyed making this project, and you can find more awesome projects and kits like this one at our store in Webster Groves or online at youcando.com. Have a great day!